Hall of Fame inductions, the trade deadline deals, and what actually constitutes a waste pitch. We got a lot to talk about. It's This Week in Baseball. I mean, I have to say, I've only really recently, mostly since we started doing this show, gotten into paying attention to the Hall of Fame ceremony, but I thought this was, as far as ones go, this was a pretty good one this year. Ichiro's speech was fantastic, and I thought it was a really good crop of guys that got on, even if we had some discussions about maybe how it took some guys too long to get there.
Well, and I think you're right. Ichiro's speech, he was much funnier than people probably know Ichiro to be. Although if you're in baseball, you know that he was kind of a guy who would do practical jokes,
renowned
and stuff
for being a guy that was funny.
Exactly. CC speech, was a very good speech. I liked it a lot. Billy Wagner, very heartfelt and had some really cool things to say. And then the widows of Dick Allen and his widow Willa. His widow really, spoke eloquently about what he faced in his career and how he was misunderstood, which I think a lot of people feel. And Dave Parker's brother did it for him, and also sort of made you sort of think of Dave Parker as, man, I don't think people appreciated how great a player he was.
Right. Made it, especially or for people like me who had never really heard or thought about these guys as players up until these Hall of Fame cycles. And if you're not somebody that's plugged in, you're really not. You probably never really thought about Dave Parker.
Right. And it's funny because Dick Allen and he certainly had Hall of Fame miss as well. He didn't have a nickname. People mistakenly called him Richie, which he couldn't stand. He wanted to be called Dick Allen, and they tried to do baseball cards with Richie Allen on it and all that stuff. And then
why force that on him?
Major League Baseball did weird things like that with names and stuff like that. And Dave Parker had the nickname the Cobra. That's a pretty good nickname.
That's a pretty good nickname.
That's a pretty good name. So, yeah, we talked about before that weekend that maybe we should plan a trip and be there for that. I just feel it's going to be like 1,000 degrees. You're not going to be able to do anything.
But you saw, it was not like there's a crazy crowd there.
No,
and if you, it's the kind of problem that, it's not easy to reserve the time up there because there's so many people going out there. There's not a lot of places to stay. But if you scope out the weather a couple weeks or a month beforehand and you think it might be the right kind of weather, you could get lucky and get a really cool weekend, and it's probably a wonderful time.
So, really, really great weekend. And we really haven't had a chance, and you started by talking about everything that led up. We haven't had a podcast since the trading deadline.
Right, because of the way the podcast falls. We had one on the Sunday before the trade deadline, which left a lot of time between then and
then last week it happened.
And it started off slow, but it picked up steam, and a lot of players moved all over the place.
Yeah, and relievers being traded was really the thing that I think was overall, the thing that you looked at and said, wow, there are a lot of folks that changed hands going to contending teams who needed to refresh their bullpen.
Well, I think it's very interesting you point that out, because if we look at the top the starting pitchers that were available, almost none of them won anywhere. Shane Bieber was really the only guy that I could say is a needle mover that got traded, or somebody that you're at least really excited about as a starting pitcher.
Yeah, and even that's a little bit, he's coming off of injury, so you don't really know what you're going to get from him. Do you think that the asking price was too high from the teams that had starters that might have been considered on the block, like Zach Gallen? We saw Merrill Kelly go, actually. He went at the end, so there was one of the guys.
I think the same way in Moneyball, teams eventually caught on to the things that the A's were doing and were being like, oh yeah, these metrics are important. I think teams are catching on to the way the Dodgers and the Mets and the Phillies look at pitchers and go, it's not worth it to give most starting pitchers any kind of contract or years.
Frankie Montas.
Right. And so if you're looking at guys like Merrill Kelly and Zach Gallen and Mitch Keller, who are owed a bunch of money, and you're going to have to give prospects to get them and then pay
for
them
2-month rentals.
Right. You're like, I don't like that, especially because if you're a team that's not going to make it, I think that's another thing, is that, like, okay, how many games is Zach Allen going to help you win, as opposed to a reliever who might appear in way more games over the period of time where you have him?
So I'm writing about this right now. So I'm going to step out of the trade deadline for a moment and just say, yeah, I think what's happened with starting pitchers to me is obviously we know they're not even pitching 6 innings in the game on average. I think 5 2/3 is the average major league start. And I think it's switched that the stars are there to not exhaust the bullpen. So the bullpen has some steam for the playoffs. And if you're a teams that are in contention and all that, you don't even need your starters to pitch more than 5 innings because the Dodgers showed you last year you can go with like hardly any starting pitchers and win the World Series.
I mean, the Mets lost today. I'm just kind of thinking about that. The Mets lost today, and right now they are now 63 and 48.
49.
49. So they're 63 and 49 because they're going to most likely lose today unless they pull off an all-time comeback. So at 63 and 49, you would end up at they played 112 games. So they've got 50 games left. Just thinking about that, if you went out and got a starting pitcher, how many starts is that guy going to get?
Yeah, he's probably going to get. He might get 9.
How many games do you think Ryan Helsley will appear in?
More than 9.
Right. And then at playoffs, how many games do you think he'll appear in?
I think Ryan Helsley will in at least half the games, if not more.
Exactly. That, I think, is a big reason why teams are not excited to trade for starting pitching, because when you're not trading them for a long period of time, you're really, especially from a rental perspective, you're getting such little value out of it. The only reason I think you would do that is like somehow you're in the reverse situation where you already have the crazy bullpen and you're like, okay, the thing that puts us over the edge is we'll have one pitcher that if he gets hot, he could go 7 in a game.
And even that, look, we're bringing in pitchers, and we think, okay, we need them to eat innings, right? So that's why you want to go maybe bringing a starting pitcher that maybe will fortify the bottom of your rotation, the 4 and the 5 guy. You got a guy but except they can't go 5 or 6 innings. They're not doing it. They're getting knocked out, so your bullpen is still getting killed.
Right.
And you have this guy there. It's
not worth it.
It's
from a
not
value.
worth it.
And that's why you just saw elite relievers going all over the place. The Mets, the Phillies, the Padres, everybody went out and tried to get. The Yankees went out and traded for relievers. Everybody was trying to
hasn't helped the Yankees much.
No, they had a dreadful series against the Marlins.
The Marlins, I don't know if they won today. They were leading, but had they won today, they will be at 500. I would have lost a bet on the Marlins being 500 anytime this year.
The only team in MLB history with a winning record against the New York Yankees.
Oh, that's good. That's good. I like that. The Yankees probably hate that,
right?
and the World Series is something that they haven't had to be to in a long time. The Marlins, they're not going to get there this year, but I think they've opened a lot of people's eyes. And I gave Clayton McCullough a real hard time early in the season for some very questionable managing decisions when he first took over the team, and times he was running in situations. But they have responded, and now keeping Alcantara and Perez and.
They didn't sell.
They've got some pitchers there, so yeah, I think.
I think that's when you have a good mojo season like this going, that not selling those guys can be a good thing, especially when you've got a bunch of young guys playing passionately. I imagine some of that dies down if all of a sudden your veterans are traded out of the clubhouse and
right,
you're left with the shutters torn off.
And in the playoffs, your 4 and your 5 starters aren't really going to pitch.
Mm-hmm.
Right, so it's your 1, 2, 3, and if you got 3 pitchers on your starting staff that you hope can go 5 innings in the playoffs, that's all you really expect.
Right. If they got a 6th, you're dancing for joy.
Right. So I think the game has really switched, and people can say it's very different and not the same, and not as fun to go there and watch a starting pitcher match up with another starting pitcher and have an epic battle, which still happens upon occasion. This year, even their pitchers can go deep in games, and they do sometimes. It's just more often they're not.
Right. And I mean, we still saw some position players moving around. The Mariners traded for Eugenio Suarez after trading for
Eugenio.
Yes. Brian Hayes went to the Reds.
Hit a home run his first game.
Ryan McMahon earlier on in the trade deadline went to the
Red Sox.
Yankees.
Got Steven Matz.
Oh, I was saying position players. And the Astros, I guess, in a way, did a favor to the Twins by taking Carlos Correa's contract off their hands. As much as I imagine just the entire trade deadline stung for the Twins, that's a trade I can understand they make, because most teams, even though they didn't get much back, who was going to want to take that Correa contract?
And the Astros have experience with a guy who's done a lot of good things for that team.
Exactly.
I guess he's going to play third base for Paradis until Paradis comes back, if he comes back from injury.
Right.
So I think that that's pretty a good thing for the Astros, who needed some hitting, as they're still waiting for Yordan Alvarez to come back and fortify as well that lineup.
We still saw some guys go around. Jose Caballero went to the Yankees as insurance for Volpe.
Caballero, yeah,
but right. Even though he ended up making an error in right field, where he's been very good defensively, but that just seemed like a game where the spirits of bad luck infested the Yankees, and they were just destined to lose.
Well, Mr. Volpe better get his defensive game together for the Yankees. I know he can hit some home runs and some prodigious ones, but defensively he's had a struggle, and Caballero is going to have a chance to play some shortstop there, I think.
Right, and interestingly, despite all their defensive troubles, the Yankees are still second place in the AL East, destined for at least a wild card spot.
The Red Sox caught them.
The Red Sox have
passed them.
Oh my!
Yes. The Red Sox are now in second place. And remember how dumb my Red Sox pick for that division looked.
Not as much
it's
anymore.
not as dumb as it looked back in.
I guess in that case, then the bad defense has really doomed the Yankees, but it's not saved the Atlanta Braves either, who have been
number
one defensive team in baseball, and they look like they're in danger of losing 90+ games this year.
That's I heard that too as well, and they did win today, and so we talked about that in our preview last week. So they played the Bristol Speedway MLB Speedway game, and so that was supposed to be played last night, and I don't know why they made these poor fans.
They decided instead of a speedway to host it in an aquarium.
It was raining so hard, and they waited like 2 hours to start the game. Then they started again. They played it in a driving rainstorm in the first inning, and then they went, "Yeah, this is a dumb idea,
is stupid."
And so they set the record even last night, the all-time record for a Major League Baseball game attendance in a game that didn't count. They had 91,000 people show up,
impressive,
which beat the all-time record of 84,000 in Cleveland in 1954, when at the big municipal stadium they hosted
the LA Coliseum.
It didn't, but that wasn't a regular season game. That was an exhibition game, so it's the largest for a regular season game. And so what they did is that when they hit a home run, and there were 2 home runs in the game, I think both by the Braves, they have their little race car out there, and it says home run, and it goes around the track, when he hits a home run. And actually, that's probably the coolest thing about the whole game.
I just have to ask, as somebody that went to USC, did it evoke memories of the
horse? Yes, that's exactly what I was thinking, going, the horse. Anyway, I don't know if they're planning to do this annually, and I swear there had to be people so far from the playing field in this oval speedway to host 150,000 people for some events and car races as well, that people said, what are we here for? What are we watching
over there?
I see a bunch of guys standing over there. Anyway, they had some fun with that. So yeah, and I think that the other team that really struck me was about the trading deadline with the Twins.
They struck everybody.
Traded their entire team. No, they traded 10 out of the 26 active players.
They traded 11 guys overall.
11 guys, but 10 out of the 26 active roster players. And so I think they have only 2 players under contract for next season. So that sounds like a team that's preparing for a lockout.
Well, that sounds like a team that's preparing to get sold.
Yeah, well, and that too, and there's been difficulty getting that done. But Derek Falvey, the Pobo there, came out and said, hey, we have a plan. We knew we weren't going to do it this year, so we needed to, put our minor league system back together. And you can argue whether or not they got equitable value, but if you're a Twin player who's left there, you got to feel pretty forlorn.
That's got to be a very, very depressed clubhouse right now. And that's the kind of team that you could look at them right now, and their record isn't quite terrible yet. They're 52-59, but they could plummet and join the White Sox. They could. That's a team that could go into a free fall over the last 2 months of the season, because they've got nothing to play for, and there's got to be no spirit in that clubhouse.
But they didn't trade Joe Ryan of all the guys, and I guess he's like, we're going to build around this guy, and he and Buxton, I think, are the only 2 guys that are under long-term, deals for them. So they're cleaning house and starting over, and you make a good point that perhaps the sale or the impending sale is a reason that's being done. I wanted to talk about the fact that Jimmy Rollins of the Phillies, and we don't give the Phillies enough credit here since we're Met fans, but was inducted to the Philadelphia Hall of Fame yesterday and on Saturday. Made me think about Jimmy Rollins again as a Hall of Famer, and I kind of gone back and forth on that, even between he and Utley, going, if I had to choose between them, and not to say heresy, shortstop is,
I would look at Jimmy Rollins and go, you know what, he should be on the ballot so I can argue about him for a couple more years.
I don't know why I let the WAR thing get to me so much with Jimmy Rollins. He had a 44 career WAR in a long career, so I think he barely averaged 3 WAR a season. Has an MVP.
I think it gets to you because there's guys that have greater WARs than him that you would look at and go, yeah, he's not a Hall of Famer. And so it's harder to put him in there. And then it's especially hard when there's guys at shortstop that aren't in, like that could be in, but but due to steroids and other stuff aren't in.
Those guys, and then our old favorite Vern Stevens. When you look at a guy like that back from the 40s, you think, okay, this guy was a slugger, but maybe not the greatest defensive player. He played a lot of shortstop, and so he's not in. And so where do you draw the line between what is a Hall of Very Good guy, as you like to say,
right,
and a Hall of Famer?
And so it's also just really tough as people that constantly, proponents of a bigger Hall. It's really tough to sit here and say, yeah, but that guy doesn't deserve to be in.
Well, and that's why I go back and forth. I don't want to be that guy was a really good player, and as a fan of a team that played his team a lot, you saw a lot of Jimmy Rollins over the years. He was a guy you didn't want to see coming up to the plate ever.
The same way, it's never going to feel fair to what was the 65th team in the NCAA that missed the tournament. It's got to be like the 69th now.
Yeah, I know. I get your point.
I think it's going to be the same way. Somebody's always going to be the best player that's not in the Hall of Fame, and it will always feel very unfair to that guy in particular.
And if you live in Philadelphia, you are sure that he belongs in the Hall of Fame.
Oh, sure.
So does Utley, for that matter.
And that's why I say we should probably have both of them on the ballot, because I would rather put in Rollins compared to Utley, just because I don't like Utley purely on the basis of that slide. So I would be like, yeah, let's put in Jimmy Rollins over Utley.
So I also saw this week that the Giancarlo Stanton has become the 8th player in Major League history with 2,000 career strikeouts. It's an exclusive club. There's some really good players that have struck out 2,000 times. There's also Adam Dunn, who you wouldn't be surprised is in that club.
Mm-hmm.
And Stanton is a guy who is going to get to 400 home runs. I don't know that he's going to get to 500, and I don't know that would put him over the top. I feel
like he would need to get to 500 for me to really
even consider it.
Even considering, or at least close to it, because would you describe him as complete a hitter as Edgar Martinez was?
No.
Right, and he's basically the same player.
He's certainly a better power hitter than Martinez.
Right, but Martinez has a similar number of career home runs. He's got a lot of career home runs.
He didn't get hurt as much as Stanton.
But that's the problem, is that Stanton only has the home runs to fall back on.
And an MVP.
So yes, so I think that is some. I think that I just think that without that milestone career statistic, I think it's a lot harder for Stanton to make the Hall of Fame, because
yeah,
Martinez won 2 batting titles, had 309 career homers, and had a 312 career batting average.
Right, and in a sport that we don't look at batting average quite the same that we used to, but if you looked at his ops plus, I imagine it's very good.
His career ops plus is 147.
There you go, and that's it. That's
career
the difference.
OPS of 933.
Yeah, those two things are the reason why he wasn't maybe not the power hitter that Stanton is, but he hit enough power.
Right, and his power was a lot.
And he had the good average, and so he had the good on base average. So
he's got a higher career OPS and a higher career OPS plus.
Yeah.
Stanton.
So, I think it's interesting how everything's changing, right? We probably aren't going to have, after these guys get into the Hall of Fame, Scherzer and Verlander and Kershaw, you're not going to have 3,000 strikeout guys anymore. It maybe Sale gets there, but it's
the metric we'll use to evaluate how good they were in their career won't be strikeouts. It'll be strikeouts per 9.
And 500 home runs is not a sure ticket to getting into the Hall of Fame.
Right.
Thank you, Gary Sheffield.
100%. I think we no longer value length of career is no longer a thing that's valued nearly as much.
But at the same time, here's what I want to say. So 500, you could put everybody who's ever had 500 home runs. It'd be like another 2 guys or 3 guys.
Right. It's just tough. It's just tough because you would never want to set up some weird, rule. Oh, if you get 500 home runs,
you're right.
You're in the Hall of Fame. Because then what happens if you get the home run guy who has 500 career hits? They're all home runs.
Yeah, but and that's why I says at the same time, is the Hall of Fame better because Gary Sheffield isn't in it?
Right, right. That's where it gets hard.
That's where I kind of go with it. So, and the Cubs are going to have the All-Star game at Wrigley Field in 2027, and they have not had an All-Star game there since 1990, which is surprising. And
I wonder if that'll be the send-off for Wrigley.
Oh, man, the Cub fans are coming for you now. They had to do all kinds of agree to do all kinds of safety renovation or things in front around Wrigley Field. I've been to a couple of games there. It's a great place.
I've been to a game there. It's a great place.
So really fun park to go to. No, the Wrigley ain't going nowhere. Wrigley, they'll refurbish it before they take it down, I'd say. So. Okay, so let's get to the topic.
So I think what's really interesting, one of the things that we always talk about, we talked about both when watching baseball and when I was pitching, was a waste pitch. And everybody that's a baseball fan sort of colloquially knows what a waste pitch is.
How many times did your dad, from the dugout,
Nothing
you're on the
too
mound,
good.
0-2, nothing too good with 2 strikes. And that's just like a baseball dad thing to say,
Right.
And it's not a unsound, thing, but I'm sure you hated hearing it a million times.
Right. I mean, because I think it always frustrated me the same way it frustrates me when we're watching baseball. We always call it a non-competitive pitch,
right?
Where it's really hard to throw a pitch that isn't too good, but it's good enough that the guy might swing.
Maybe I'll swing at that, right?
Right. Because I'm like, okay, well then I just feels like I wasted a pitch.
And you did, and somehow that used to be okay, right? We grew up going at a waste pitch. Oh, I said 0-2. Yeah, he's not going to throw a strike. The batter knows he's not going to throw a strike, and the batter didn't throw at it. So that was kind of a non-competitive pitch back then, but we liked it.
Right. I'm like, okay, well, if he knows I'm not going to throw a strike, then he just sit there, and then what's the incentive to he just gets a free ball.
So there are levels, right? Of
right.
That,
and so I think that when we're talking about waste pitches, what we always talk about isn't actually a waste pitch, and major league teams have gone a lot deeper in evaluating when a pitch is thrown, what zone a pitch kind of ends up in, because it's not the strike zone. That's not just it. That's too simple.
There's more than the strike zone.
There's more than that. You actually end up with 4 different zones. So the first zone is where the batter wants it and the pitcher doesn't want it. That's the heart of
the bad
play.
Zone.
This is a bad zone. So this is a zone that's actually a smaller zone within the strike zone.
And that's based on each individual hitter.
Right, based on each individual hitter. But it's always the same amount of space. It's just, changes based on the size of the hitter. But it's a certain area within the center of the plate. That's the heart of the plate. Pitchers only throw about 25% of their pitches in this zone. Batters swing at almost 75% of pitches in this zone. And
they're trained to hit strikes.
Right. And if they don't swing, it is called a strike 99.9% of the time.
Okay, that's strong.
So right now.
Unless Angel Hernandez is behind the plate.
Or Las Diaz. It's only not called a strike when the umpire makes a grievous mistake. The shadow of the zone, this is really the overlap area. So this is the area that kind of is around the edges of the strike zone, both that are in the strike zone and just outside the strike zone. This is the shadow of the strike zone. This pitches here. These are the pitches that when you're watching it on TV, you're like, I'm not sure that one's a strike when the umpire calls it, or you get annoyed that he didn't call it a strike because it's right on the edge of the box.
And just to interject for a second, the box that we see on TV is not wholly accurate, but I think fans have kind of adapted to. That's what I'm looking at, so that's what I'm going to call it. I mean, if it's in the box, it's a strike. If it's not, it's out.
Right, and so this is where pitchers are generally trying to throw the majority of their pitches. They throw about 40% of their pitches in this range because this is where when you're watching a guy nibble, this is where he's trying to nibble into. It's hard to do well in this area. Batters generally don't have great averages on pitches in this area. It's much harder to hit a pitch there compared to something that's in the heart of the plate. And so they swing about just over 50% of the time on these pitches. But this is still an area where the batter is swinging a good percentage of the time. So then the area that's next is the chase region. So this is a much bigger region that's fully outside the strike zone. And it's kind of basically within reason of where the batter can kind of reach with his bat normally. Like it's not fully, but this is where you're trying to get the batter to chase something. So this is a pitch that's fully off the plate and was never going to be a strike. You could never call this pitch a strike. At least you shouldn't. And so pitchers only throw about 25% of their pitches here. This is where Kodai Senga's ghost forks end up a lot of the time, just to give you an idea. And the batters swing at about 25% of these pitches with almost always poor results. Very few guys are good at hitting balls in the chase region because it's really hard to. And then the last area, this is the true waste pitch. These are pitches that are well off the plate into batters boxes. Less than 10% of all overall pitches are thrown into that area, with only 5% of the batters actually still swinging at a pitch.
Into your box where you're standing.
Either into where you're standing or the opposite
box.
batter's box.
Okay.
That's how bad a pitch has to be in the waste zone. No batter ever wants to be swinging at a pitch, and no pitcher ever wants to.
It seems like they swing at those a lot.
They swing at them about 5% of the time.
It just seems like when you see it, maybe because you just notice it.
Right.
Like, what was he thinking?
One, what it is that the chase region is far bigger than the average person expects, because we don't realize how good these guys are with being able to reach out and hit balls that are far away from them. So it is a much bigger region around the plate that's a hittable pitch than you would think. So you have to throw the ball very far outside the bounds of the plate for it to be a true waste pitch.
Well, and here's the thing I think that also we don't credit enough is the pitches are so good, right? So that the hitter can see a ball break a ridiculous amount, and it might start and look as a strike and be way outside the strike zone because it broke the whole time, but you can't adjust quick enough to realize, oh no, that's way out there.
Right. And just because, so this was what turned me on to this statistic was actually something I saw online. It was a post somebody was talking about online about a Clase and why he's now going through some of the trouble that he's going through, because his locker's been cleaned out in Cleveland and we don't know what's happening.
Well, what we think is happening is he and his teammate, Luis Garcia, I think, was one of the Luis Garcias.
It was another
Guardians pitcher,
right?
Basically, were thought of as betting or helping win money on some of their side bets, if you will.
Side bets, right? And so one of the things people think it might be connected to were prop bets on balls and strikes on like the first pitch of an inning, because it would be like, oh, Clase comes in and he throws a ball for the first pitch, because you can not so shockingly bet on stuff like that. And so to give you an idea, Clase only throws about 5% of his total pitches in the waste zone. The league average is 8%.
So he's above average.
He's below average.
But he's a better. He doesn't throw it out there.
He doesn't throw it out there. The first pitch of the inning this year, he throws it at 17.5% in the waste area.
Mm-hmm.
That's a huge jump.
And you can bet on that.
Now, but you can still get an idea that like Clase is pretty good, because he throws about 28% of his pitches inside the heart of the zone. The league average is 27%. So this tells you that he's got elite stuff, because he can get away with throwing his pitches.
So how could he miss so many times on the first pitch if he's that accurate?
Right. And he's way better than league average in terms of run value. So this is a good statistics, because it's going to tell you who are the guys that got the elite kind of stuff, because they get away with throwing in the heart of the zone. Guys that don't have elite stuff can't get away with throwing in the heart of the zone. You'll see that reflected in their statistics. Those are the guys that have to live in the shadow of the zone in the chase area, because if they ever stray too far close to the middle of the plate, it gets crushed.
So, a Hall of Fame pitcher, Greg Maddux, has been said to have said a number of times that he, on an 0-2 pitch, would not throw a waste pitch. And he says, I've already got the guy down 0-2. Why would I want to mess around? Let me just get the guy out instead of trying to fiddle around and nibble away on out of the zone pitches and hope he swings at them.
I think I understand the perspective, because it comes from the older school thought of like, well, let the hitter get himself out, because you could throw a pitch that you didn't necessarily have to put maximum effort into, because it was never intended up being a good pitch. And maybe the guy just swings and gets himself out, and you got a pitch throwing at like 70% effort, basically.
But of course, then Greg Maddux doesn't think that everybody can do anything but throw like Greg Maddux.
Greg Maddux is like, yeah, but I can
put it exactly where I want it.
Right, exactly.
Can't everybody?
and the guy's not going to hit it anyway, so why would I waste a pitch?
And while he knows that, he was just talking about himself in terms of the way that he approached it.
Right, that's how he approached it and how he looked at it differently. And you know what? I think one of the things that, I saw a really interesting clip that, we forget how back in the day, guys were not coached in the same way. That, I saw an interesting thing George Brett was talking about. He's like, when he first came up to the major leagues, he was hitting like 210. He wasn't hitting at all. And like, he was into his second season and he wasn't hitting well. And his hitting coach came up to him and he's like, listen, we got the next couple of days off. Come work with me. He's like, okay. Well, when you're up at
Charlie Lau, I think it was.
Charlie Lau was the coach. And he's like, okay, well, hey, when you're up at a plate, what's your approach? He's like, I don't know. I hit the ball. He's like, I had never been coached on how to hit up until this point.
Because everything he had done up until that point, his natural talent allowed him to succeed. He didn't have to have a plan. See the ball, hit the ball.
Right, he didn't have any approach. So then Charlie Lau kind of was like, okay, this is what we're going to work on. This is what we're going to have him do. And by like at that point to the end of the season, he was hitting 290 going into the last 4 games, and then the hitting coach Charlie Lau got fired right at the end of that season, and he didn't hit well in the last 4 games. And he's like, I think if they hadn't fired him, I would have hit 300 that year.
And Charlie Lau was a proponent of releasing the hand off the bat, which George Brett did as well. Not everybody could do that as successfully as George Brett, however.
But I think it just like, as much as coaching, some guys are just like bucking against traditional trends. These guys, sometimes they've gotten there. They've never had the coaching to figure out, to think more. And so I think that's just so interesting looking at these pitches. Like, okay, if you're Greg Maddux, like, well, yeah, why would I waste the pitch? It's inefficient. I know I can get him out.
But the hitters have been trained as well now, too, to know what not to swing at. And sometimes the stuff is so good they can't resist. But a lot of times they understand, I'm just not going to swing at this particular pitch, even if it is a strike.
The pitchers, I think, are because they're not worried about striking out, especially they're not worried about striking out looking. They might not like it, but they know it's not going to reflect badly on them in the eyes of the coaches and the team if they strike out a whole lot. You're not going to be worried if you take a called third strike when the guy throws a backdoor slider, because the worst thing to do is to take a feeble cut at it and potentially like ground into a double play. That's a way worse thing you can because it's like, okay, well, you were never going to hit the ball effectively swinging at that, so why are you swinging at that pitch?
And what we say when you and I sit and we watch a game together and we talk about non-competitive pitches, you're wondering what was the pitcher actually trying to do. And I'm guessing most of the time he wasn't trying to throw it that far away. It just was, if I'm going to miss outside and away, and he missed way worse.
Right. It's like you're trying to throw a slider that starts on the already off the edge of the plate.
So it's maybe a strike for a second, but
right. Maybe the guy just swings at it when he shouldn't. But like, oh wait, my outside slider started too far outside, and now it just totally gets away.
I look silly, and no one's going to swing at that ever.
Right. And we always say it's such a bad pitch because for the batter, he can tell it's not a strike so early, he doesn't have to expend any effort on that at bat. Whereas at least if it's close pitches, like, you have to think about it for a second. It ratchets up the tension. There's a release when he gets a pitch off, basically.
It was easier when you could just think of it as waste pitches are 0-2 pitches that shouldn't be in the strike zone.
Well, it also turned into a thing. We didn't care that pitchers would throw 125 pitches in a game. Now, when your pitchers rarely throw above 100, throwing a pitch that has no intention of doing anything, you have no intention of getting it out or a strike, that's just wasting one of your precious pitches. If you only get 100 pitches in a game, you just wasted 1% of your pitches on a worthless pitch, essentially.
And I hope it's because sometimes the pitchers can't control their own stuff, and it does things they can't.
Nowadays, I think it is the same way. Sometimes you throw a curveball that it's a flat curveball and it's a hanging curve and it gets crushed. Sometimes you throw a slider and it's, that was not a good one,
and you get away with it and the guy misses it.
Right.
So it can be both ways. But yeah, it's an interesting subject, and I really had not thought much about the different areas around the plate that you would go in. From a percentage standpoint, it's fascinating to see that the pitches in the zone, the batters pretty much swing at the good pitches.
Right. And
the marginal ones
the teams
that they
are
shouldn't.
even looking at the individual pitches and where they're falling into it, because you might say, look, your changeup doesn't have enough movement on it because it's only falling from one zone into another. It's not got enough movement on it to break across multiple zones, which means if you ever miss, it's not going to miss enough. You're able to tell how you want pitches to move probably through multiple zones on this, because those are the ones that are really hard to hit. That's what Senga's ghost fork, because that'll come in looking like it's in the heart of the plate, and then it'll fall all the way into the chase zone.
I guess in his case, it's funny. I was thinking about him too, because that ghost fork is a pitch that I can't imagine he throws like 10% strikes with that pitch. They're basically always below the zone, and the hitter just can't resist swinging at it. And if you're a hitter, you think, okay, I am never going to swing at that pitch, except that you can't tell.
The hard part about it is it's probably really hard to tell the difference on sight between a 95-mile-an-hour fastball and an 85-mile-an-hour ghost fork. It looks the same until all of a sudden, as you start swinging, the bottom just drops out of it, and it looks like it's a fastball that's right down the middle that you can crush, and oh wait, it's gone.
He's struggling a little bit right now, but when he's good, it's unfair.
Right.
The guys look silly.
And even when he's not good, they don't hit that pitch.
Yeah.
They're just able, I think when he's not.
But they don't swing at it, and so that's why he's walking guys
right.
and stuff like that. So, he lives outside the meat of the zone, and that's a pitch that probably a batter is better off never swinging at.
Oh, for sure.
So, okay. Well, that's a good one for this week, and we'll be back with, we're kind of enjoying doing this stat of the week thing. So
yeah, so reach out to us. Let us know if there's any stats you want us to talk about. If there's anything that
I want to do like good old fashioned RBIs or something like that, like the hated stat of RBIs. But why are RBIs hated? Aren't they wonderful? Aren't they important?
Why don't we look into that next week?